Pastor Roy Gearhart from Galloway United Methodist Church in Franklin, Pennsylvania, sharing a few words of encouragement to help us follow after Jesus. Well, it's a cold, dreary, rainy day out here, and so I've ducked under the porch to stay out of the rain. It makes me think about the people of Israel as they were traveling on the Exodus. They didn't have the option to travel or to be there in the wilderness just on the nice days. They had to be there whether it was hot or cold, whether it was rainy or sunny. They had to go through all sorts of circumstances, and many of them were truly challenging. I've camped out in my life in various kinds of circumstances. I can tell you that if I'm taking my grandchildren to camp out in the backyard, I'm going to pick a nice evening where there's no threat of rain. But I have camped out numerous times in a tent when it was less than optimal conditions. One year, leading a group of youth down the Clarion River on a canoe trip, we camped out several nights on the river. And this particular year, it was a miserable journey. It was cold, it was rainy, we had gotten wet, and you could hardly dry out. I remember our final night camping out. We were at a campground, but it didn't give us much comfort. We had to stretch a tarp out just to create a space where we could get a campfire to stay lit. That night, I stretched out my sleeping bag on top of a picnic table and slept there that night. That was the best comfort I could find. Once at a historical reenactment, I had gotten our large canvas tent set up, and I was trying to go to sleep, but it was a windy evening, and every little bit there would be a big gust of wind come roaring through, and woof, it would inflate that tent like a balloon. And every time it did, I would sit upright. It would startle as I was trying to fall asleep. Finally, after going through that for some time, checking the tent stakes, I couldn't endure anymore. And I just said, Lord, I have to go to sleep. I can't stay awake like this. And I said, God, I'm going to trust you that if there's anything I need to wake up for, that you'll wake me up. And you know what? I went straight to sleep and slept all the way till morning, and the tent was still there. God had given me a restful night as I trusted in him. And you know, in many of our hardships, that's a thing that we have the chance to experience. A rest in the midst of the storm when we learn to trust in God. Trust, though, is something that's often really hard to do, most of all when we're faced with challenges and crises in our life. It's hard to trust God, and it's hard to trust others. In fact, sometimes people can't trust God because they've never learned to trust other people in their lives, or they've been disappointed and betrayed many times over. Think about Moses. In Exodus 18, he was given advice by his father-in-law that he needed to entrust leadership to a whole group of other leaders so that they could get the tasks done that God had given them. Think of Moses having to trust those other leaders. This is a situation where he's many times over been betrayed, where people have said, we're behind you, Moses. And then the next thing you know, he was being accused by them and thrown under the bus and blamed for everything that was going wrong. Now he has to trust them. It's only with the strength of God that he's able to do that he begins to trust others. And you know, the wonderful thing about trust is this, is that trust builds on trust. That when we learn to trust God, it strengthens our ability to trust others. When we have the ability to trust others, it builds up our trust in God. Our ability to trust is strengthened there. And so that when you and I go through crises, and sometimes there, truly learn to lean on each other. Sometimes there are crises that come along that it's a stranger that you meet in that moment who offers to help. And having no one else to turn to, you trust them. It creates a bond that lasts for a lifetime. This trust in the midst of a struggle builds a memory into our lives that we live in all the rest of our life, because it's now a strength inside us. And that gives us a greater ability to trust God, to be able to just open up our lives and to believe that there is hope. Because you see, as trust builds on trust, trust also builds the flame of hope. Think about that today in your own life. Whatever struggle you're in, it may be the time for you to learn to trust God and to be able to rest easy. And when you are trustworthy with others, you give them a building block of hope in their lives. May God bless you today. And as you share this good news, may God make you a blessing wherever He takes you.